Okay, we've started leash manners inside where there's less distraction and we can be off leash. Now we're outside. We're going to start working on the actual walking on leash. So what I want you to think about is what the expectation is if they tune out. So if they tune out and hit the end of the line, we're going to stop. I want to make sure we don't get any forward motion when we hit the end of the leash. I want dogs to understand that tension on the leash is not a normal part of our walk. I want to make sure they're understanding tension on the leash means we're not going anywhere. But we need to set a clear expectation about what they need to do to get us moving again. So if Rocket hits the end of the line and I stop, I need to set a clear expectation for him to connect back with me somehow to get me moving again. Does he need to look at me? Does he need to sit? Does he need to return to my side? There's no right or wrong answer to any of that. You can pick what you want, but you need to be clear. Again, we need to have a clear expectation about what leash manners should look like, what it should look like out on a walk, right? Okay, so I want dogs to understand that when they are on a leash, there should be some slack in it. If it's tight, if they're at the end of the line, if there's tension on it, that's not a normal part of our walk. Right? So from the dog's perspective, I really ultimately want the leash to be irrelevant because they're tuned in enough with you that they don't go beyond that. So I look at the leash kind of as the emergency backup plan. It's to prevent them from making poor decisions, but if it's the only thing that tells them that they can't run off and do other things, then there's not really a good strong connection there between the person and the dog. Okay, so we're going to start moving. If he tunes out and hits the end of the line, I'm going to stop. For him, I'm going to actually ask him to come back to me, so I'm going to have to help him with that. I can't just stop, but once we've stopped, I'm going to see if I can get him to connect back, come back to my side, or come back to me before we get moving again. So this is going to take some repetition. For most dogs, it's going to take quite a few repetitions before they realize what that expectation is, what they need to do in order to get you moving again. But when they start to realize if there's tension on that leash, we're not going anywhere, they start to figure out that they are the ones who put the tension on, they're the ones who need to fix the tension, they're the ones who need to relieve that pressure before we get to continue on. Okay. For most dogs, the problem is pulling forward, trying to get to things. Chase that bunny, smell that tree, visit the neighbor, whatever it is they're trying to get to. Okay. Occasionally we have the dogs who put the brakes on, who are so busy sniffing one spot or just want to and don't want to walk in the hot sun. Sometimes they don't want to move. But typically the main issue we're dealing with is the dogs who are pulling and trying to get somewhere faster than you're ready to go. Okay, so we're going to start getting a little bit of movement happen, and we're going to see if we can get Mr. Rocket to walk with us. Hi, buddy. Rocket. This way, bud. Good job, buddy. Boy. Rocket. Let's go this way. Good job, bud. We're going this way. Good boy. Good job, buddy. When he puts tension, hi, Rocket. Here we go, bud. Good boy. There we go. Nice, buddy. Good job. If he hits the end of the line, I stop. Rocket. Come on, buddy. Hey, bud. Good boy. Good job, bud. Nice, buddy. Good job, bud. Good boy, Rocket. Let's go this way. Let's go this way. Oh, good job, bud. Nice. What a good boy. There we go. Good boy. Wanna go this way? Let's go this way. Good job, buddy. Good boy. Rocket. Good boy. Good job, bud. Nice. Good job, buddy. Nice job. Rocket. Sit. Nice, bud. Good job, buddy. Good boy. Nice. Okay. Hang on, bud. Hang on. Let's get you untangled. There we go. Okay. Now, we're starting out here. If you noticed when he was connecting back, the first time I actually clicked and rewarded him for coming back, he didn't take the treat. He actually just spit it out. So when he was hitting the end of the line and I was getting him to connect back, I was just praising, rewarding, and moving forward. I wasn't clicking and treating only because he wasn't taking the treats yet. I can click and reward for connecting back and and give a treat. So if the click and reward, if the treats are helping connect back a little bit faster and keeping things moving, great, use those. But if you get out and you've got a dog who doesn't care about the treats once you're outside and moving around, especially if there's interesting things around, don't worry about that. Just don't click then. Just verbally praise and use forward motion, right? As soon as they connect back with you, we get moving again. Because ultimately, that's the real reward anyway. I want to make sure that the walk itself becomes the reward. The click and the treat is really just to help that connection happen a little bit faster and get a little more tuned in with you. But if it's not helping, if he's not interested in it, that's just one less thing we have to fade out later. So I'm not worried about that. We want some type of reward, some type of value, but it doesn't always have to be clicking food, right? So the walk itself, really, we want to be the ultimate reward. So if he wants to go check something out, if he wants to sniff something, if he wants to say hello to somebody, those things we can start to use as the rewards. Because really, I want to be able to shift to that anyway eventually. If I can do it a little bit faster, great. Then I just have less food to use. Okay. Now, if you saw, he was connecting back pretty quickly. It actually was doing a pretty good job. We're not out on a real distracting walk yet. We're just in our training area right now. If we were out walking where the bunnies are running around, this would be more challenging, but we're trying to shift to more difficult situations as he progresses and gets a little bit better. We're trying to start out by setting him up for success by working in an area where it's a little bit easier and progressing from there if we can. Okay. Good job, Rocket. Hey, buddy. Good job, kiddo. Okay. All right. So, next thing you want to think about is there's kind of two stages to the process. So first one is he hits the end of the line, we don't go anywhere, he's got to connect back before we move again. Okay, that piece sometimes takes a while, and that's okay. Let's take some repetition for him to understand coming back to me is the expectation to get me moving again, or looking at me, or sitting, or whatever our expectation is. Okay, now the second piece where he doesn't hit the end of the line in the first place and stays tuned in so we don't have to keep stopping, expect that that's going to take longer. It almost always does. It seems to kind of happen in two stages. They get the idea of connecting back and moving again, and we end up doing a lot of that, but the second piece of just walking with us and not hitting the end of the line, that piece always takes longer, but I want to get to the point where the dog starts to understand that actually staying tuned in and keeping pace with you keeps them actually getting moving along, keeping moving along faster without all that stopping, right? So it can try your patience a little bit at first if you're having to stop a lot, but that's okay. I don't want you to get discouraged by that. That's pretty normal part of the process. Don't worry about that. We want to see that starting to click in. So when you see the dog starting to connect back faster, then we can start to take some next steps. Okay, so in his case, I wanted him to come back to me. I wanted him to actually return to me before we proceeded on. He was actually coming back pretty easily. I was prompting it a little bit by calling to him and walking backwards. Okay, so I was helping him. I want to get to the point where he just automatically starts. When I stop, he automatically turns and comes back to me without me having to prompt it. Okay, once he's doing that pretty readily, then I can start to take my next step, which is, instead of, if I am clicking and rewarding, instead of clicking and rewarding right here, good job, Rocket, good job, buddy. Instead of doing it when I get him to come back, good job, Rocket, nice, buddy. I click and reward as we're moving, right? So, Rocket, good job, buddy, what a good boy, nice. See, he tuned out right away there. So what I want to be able to do, Rocket, hey, buddy, good boy. Nice, buddy. I want to be able to start getting a couple of steps in before I click and reward. Then instead of rewarding as soon as he comes back, he stays connected for a step or two before. Hi, buddy, what a good boy. What a good boy. There you go, nice, buddy. If I can keep him tuned in a little bit longer, then I start going, now we go 2 or 3 steps before you get clicked and rewarded. Now we may go 5 or 6 steps. I don't want to always go longer. I don't want to try and stretch that out too quickly, too fast. Rocket. Good job, buddy. But if he starts to learn that staying tuned in a little bit longer on average, right, I'm going to mix that up. Good job, bud. Nice, buddy. Sometimes I'll still reward as soon as he comes back, but sometimes I'll take a step or two. Sometimes I'll take 3 or 4 steps. So I want to start drawing out how long the connection lasts. I don't want him to think I come back and I immediately go racing off. Right? I've got to get that connection back. Yeah, buddy? Good job. Go this way. Good job, buddy. Good job, Rocket. Let's go this way. Nice, bud. Good boy. That's a good boy. Nice, buddy. Nice, buddy. Nice, bud. Yeah, buddy. Want to take that treat? Okay. Bye. Oh, what a good boy. Nice. Good job, bud. Rocket. Rocket. Oh, there you go. Nice, bud. Okay. All right. Good job, sweetie. Good boy. Good boy. Very nice. Very nice. Okay. All right. So as we get moving more, if I am getting him walking by my side nicely, or walking with me, he doesn't have to be right at my side, right? As long as he's got a loose leash, and I can click and treat some of that. I can click and treat while we're moving. But I also want to just sometimes just verbally praise. Just let him know he's doing a good job, because the real reward is moving forward on the walk. Again, the clicks and treats, if it helps him stay a little more tuned in and connected, and you get further along faster, there's nothing wrong with that. But I want to make sure that sometimes when he's just walking next to you, we're praising that. We're letting him know, we're giving him feedback that he's doing a good job. We have a tendency oftentimes to, if they're walking at our side nicely and not misbehaving, we don't say anything. Sometimes we don't acknowledge it, that they're doing the right thing, that they're doing a good job. I want to make sure we give that feedback, let them know when they are doing a good job, so that they understand that's really what we want them to be doing. Oftentimes we have a tendency to go, well, that's where he should be. I don't need to say anything. But I do want to make sure I'm giving that feedback so that he knows. Okay? Good job, Rocket. You're doing a good job, buddy. Very nice. Very nice. Good job, bud. Okay, all right. So now what we're going to try is adding in a little bit of distraction, right? I want to add in something that there's up ahead that he wants to get to. Now, I don't know if he'll go after a treat or not, because he's not as interested in the food out here right now. It's a little bit warm. He's probably just not quite as hungry. But what I want to see is if there's something up ahead. So think of this as the spot where all the dogs pee and your dog always wants to stop and sniff it, or the neighbor that always comes out that he wants to say hello to, right? There's something up ahead on the walk you know he wants to get to, and he tends to pull to get to it. What I want is to have something up ahead he wants to get to, but he's only going to get there if it's something you can use to your advantage, if it's something you can actually use as a reward. So it's your distraction, it's the thing that's causing him to pull, but it's also the thing that you could use as your reward. So depending on what it is, right? Certain things we're not going to let him get to, certain things we're not going to reward him with. But if it's something we can use, I'm going to use that to my advantage. So if I've got... Are you interested in those? No? Let's walk this way. Hey buddy, let's go this way. Boy, can you find it? You don't care, huh? Did you find us right there? There you go, good job. All right, so if there's something and he's not that interested in this right now, so what I really want though is something when I toss it out ahead, he really wants to go for it. He's really interested in it, because when he first pulls, I'm going to stop. I'm going to ask him to connect back. If he can walk on a loose leash with me to get to that thing, I'll let him have that thing. Smell it, eat it, say hello to it, whatever, depending on what the distraction is. But I want to start to use those things along the walk as often as I can as the reward. So instead of having to pull something out of my pocket to reward with, I can use whatever I encounter along the way as my reward. Okay?